whole new breeze, a whole new speed of flying.
'Cause if I were an Oscar Mayer wiener.
Ho, ho, ho.
Ford goes first with the world's most exciting automobile.
The frightening and most difficult thing about being what somebody calls a creative person is that you have absolutely no idea where any of your thoughts come from, really. And especially, you don't have any idea about where they're going to come from tomorrow.
I think there's always an innate human urge to put something out there and see what people are going to make of it. We're doing exactly the same thing as the guys that were painting on caves. We're creating an atmosphere that makes us comfortable or makes us concerned or gets a reaction out of us that the communicator wanted.
Three figures at the top are watchmen in the Simpson tradition. The watchmen watch over the house and everyone in it and are guardians. And they sit on top of the eagle, which is the clan of the carver. The figure below that is an elder. In the palm of his hand, the eyes signify giving or a gift. And the figure at the base, it's a mother frog with a baby frog on its back. And that represents us, because in Simpson culture, the frog is a messenger. Rid 'em, rid 'em, rid 'em.
They call us rotators. They call us rotators because we're rotating this sign to this sign and rotating copies around the city. My family's been doing it since, I don't know, 19-something. Early 19, like 1930-something. My great-grandfather was a bill poster for the same company. That's my great-grandfather. That's my dad's grandpa. I never thought, oh, my grandpa did it, my great-grandfather did it, this is what I want to do. It was just kind of, my dad came home, you're graduating high school next week, you got a job interview doing billboards, you're going in the military, you're going to college, you ain't sitting on my couch. My dad was never out of work the whole time I was growing up. My grandfather was never out of work. My great-grandfather, even through the Great Depression when my great-grandfather was working. He never found unemployment, ever. It's been busy. I don't know any of the people who make the ads at all, not personally, no.
I was on a TV show once with David Susskind back in those days. And we said, gentlemen, what is advertising? And the guy from J. Walter Thompson, one of them, goes into this 5-minute discussion about marketing and this and that. I mean, I didn't know what the hell he was talking about. And then he said, George, why are you making faces? The camera cuts to me. David, I think these two guys and me are in a different business. And he said, well, what do you think advertising is? And I said, well, I think advertising is poison gas. Advertising should cheer you up, it should choke you, it should get the chills, and maybe you should pass out when you watch it.
It's a romantic story, it really is. Bill Bernbach, Ned Doyle, Bob Gage and I were all working at Gray Agency. Bill came into Bob's office one day and he said, well, we're going to do it. Ned Doyle is coming with us. And I thought, oh boy, he's the hottest salesman I've ever seen. And he said, he's got a friend, Mac Dane, plays tennis with him. I said, Doyle, Dane, Bernbach, it has a nice swing. Gage and Bernbach. And on this side, that's me in the year I smoked. There were 14 of us, 14 people when we started, including the production guy and the phone operator. And I was named copy chief. Same eyeglasses, see? I didn't think, oh, wow, I'm joining a place that's going to take over the advertising business. I had no sense of how big and important a move this was. I knew it was exciting.
Advertising up until the late 50s, when Bill Bernbach came along, was an old boys club. The proper school, the right connections. And that went on for years. It was ingrown mediocrity. And at first, he was given no chance. Flash in the pan, they'll catch on to him. They never caught on to him. He had caught on to them.
You said to people you worked at Doyle, Dane, Bernbach, and they looked at you as though you had suddenly turned into gold. It was the place to be, and it was such an honor to work there. That was like working for Mao or somebody amazingly powerful.
Bill Bernbach added an entire new creative force to advertising by putting the art director in the same room as the copywriter. That had never been done before. At J. Walter, my copy would be taken up one floor to the art director, who would make an ad out of my copy. We'd never discuss it. Art directors had no input in terms of the thinking. When Bernbach said, hey, art director, me copywriter, you guys work it out together from a blank sheet of paper.
Volkswagen is the most famous one, of course. This little German car that everybody disliked because it was too close after the war. Nobody thought a little ugly German car would sell. He just turned that into the hottest, chicest, coolest car around. He had an ability to see how you could just cut right through a tradition that was getting in the way of a product and turn it around and make it a positive thing.
There had always been great copywriting. I mean, there's a lot of great copy lines in the history of advertising. They laughed when I sat down at the piano. I'd walk a mile for a camel. I mean, I think there's thousands of them, What the art director brought was the fact that when you did advertising, you always looked for a big idea. So you did something that stunned.
Dear clumsy bellboys, brutal cab drivers, careless doormen, and all butter-fingered luggage handlers all over the world. Have we got a suitcase for you?
It was a joy back then to look at the advertising coming from 4, 5, or 6 agencies. It was just a joy to see these campaigns coming at you. Today, I mean, you look at advertising and you say, wow. Bob Dylan, Malcolm X, John Kennedy, and Fidel Castro. And the crosshair effect was kind of a prophetic note. A lot of Esquire covers I did were cultural breakthroughs because it's an ad, it's a statement, and what it says is, this magazine's doing some wonderful stuff in here. There's something going on, something exciting going on. Black Santa Claus was me spoofing the whites of America. Everybody said, oh my God, hey, I'm for Negro rights, but you know, they're going a little too far here, the Black Panthers. And I always say, fuck you, this son of a bitch is gonna come down your chimney and cut your balls off. Muhammad Ali, St. Sebastian. He came out in his trunks, etc., and I said, Muhammad, I want you to pose just like this. I want it kind of relaxed. I want it the same way, but your head is in agony. I hated the system. I hated the status quo. We were changing the world, and everybody respected it. They really understood you were changing the culture. I would make political and graphic statements that grabs at the heart, grabs at your throat, and make statements about what the hell you think life should be about. You know, and that's what I've done, I think, all my life with my advertising. I mean, I was always trying to sell product, but I was always making a point. Yeah, I think advertising can be, and should be, and at times has been, revolutionary, subversive.
6, 8, 9, 9.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
These are the stakes. To make a world in which all of God's children can live, or to go into the dark. We must either love each other, or we must die.
Vote for President Johnson on November 3rd. The stakes are too high for you to stay home.
You cannot imagine today a life without satellites. Satellites are at the center of the communications. It is because you have satellites that you can watch on the TV what we are doing on this earth. Ads are coming from the satellites, but satellites are coming from the ads, because with the money from the ads, we can fund and launch satellites.
My mother was very quiet. My father was out of sight. Well, he'd been an ambulance driver, and he came back from the war clinically depressed. So most of the time I spent with him growing up, he would hide. At dinner, when we would eat, there was just never a word, you know. Nobody ever talked to me about anything. And I think people who are loners or who have lives that they have to kind of overcome when they're young, I think that they get a strength that's very useful later on. Everybody thought I was going to be an actress. It was just considered inevitable. And my mother, in an effort to try to get me out of Poland, Ohio, pushed me into the theater because they couldn't afford to give me tap dancing lessons or singing lessons or anything like that. And my whole life changed because it became about the theater. And from the first moment that I got a job in advertising, which was in a department store, that whole theater experience that I'd been having all those years just all came and worked for me. Moving to Doyle Dane proved to me that I'd been right from the start, that it was the most exciting business you could possibly be in, and it was the right place for me. But it was print. Even on television, it was print. It was moving print. I wanted to turn it into the theater.
Isn't that wonderful?
So I left Doyle Dane Bernbach and went to Jack Tinker and Partners and sort of ran that for a period of time. And while I was there, I tried to get my clients to do big things, you know, that were very dramatic.
Anybody who's a terrific ad person, from the creative side anyway, usually has those two qualities. They're salesmen and they're entertainers in one. She had it to perfection.
It was a time when all planes had come out of the Army. They weren't thinking food. They weren't thinking services. When you were in them, they were as dull as they could possibly be. Everybody looked like some kind of an Army officer.
But the campaign for the new Braniff was on my shoulders, and we had piles of ideas in the corner on these tissues, piles and piles and piles, and we hated everything. She comes down into the room, like the 15th time she's done. She looks in the garbage can next to my desk, and she sees this wrinkled up piece of tissue, you know, and she pulls it out, and she looks and she says, "What's this?" We come up with that about once a day. I said, but we throw it away because it's just too obvious. She says, "Obvious? It's divine." And she said, "Do that."
Braniff International is creating the most beautiful airline in the world. We hired Emilio Pucci to design our uniforms. Our hostesses wear reversible coats of almond green and apricot, space helmets to keep out the rain, red space suits, and sometimes something a little more comfortable. And we hired Alexander Girard to do our planes. We have blue planes, orange planes, yellow planes. You can fly with us 7 times and never fly the same color twice. Inside 7 different color schemes. And since we fly to Mexico and South America, art from Peru, Brazil, and Argentina. Cha-cha-cha. Braniff International announces the end of the plain plane. We won't get you where you're going any faster, but it'll seem that way.
Well, Mary came up with the idea of painting the plane. She was the one who sold, and believe me, that's no small matter, sold the idea to Braniff and got them to do it. She overlooked the design of the uniform. She hired Pucci and she hired Alexander Girard. She got, you know, all the players involved. The advertising part of it was really the last piece, which was how do you announce it to the world?
When a Braniff International hostess meets you on the airplane, she'll be dressed like this.
We got gorgeous stewardesses in those days. That was an okay thing to do. They were all young and beautiful with beautiful legs, and we made it fun to fly. People flew with us because they were having a theatrical experience. It was a time when people loved marketing. They got it. They understood we were all having fun with each other. The world had been pretty dull after the war and through depressions, and people loved fun ideas. Life was suddenly perky.
Turn left.
I can't do it while you're watching me.
Okay, turn left.
No matter how rough you treat a rebel, it's awfully hard to hurt it.
How am I doing? A lot better than yesterday.
We made it a series of dramas, like a sitcom or something. They loved the extra effort, the fun we were doing, the drama we were giving them.
Look out for the truck!
What truck?
Behind the bus!
What bus?
The rebel has held its own against some of the worst drivers in the world.
Should I turn the windshield wiper on?
At this point, it looks like the rebels are going to outlast the teachers.
I start at 4 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on my first job between 5:30. If all the conditions are right and there's a good setup, it takes about 13 minutes.
A hell of a good salesman. Thank you very much. I loved it.
If you can find that kernel, the core of what that product is, so that when you talk about it, no matter how you talk about it, people respond and say, yes, that's right. Then if you talk about it in a strong, interesting, memorable way, they say, yeah, that's right, I'm going to buy it. It's a challenge to say the right thing the right way to get a person to do something you want them to do. And you can have and will have an effect on a lot of people.
If you want to move somebody to do something, you have to connect with them. You can't just slap them in the face with it or explain it or make a joke about it. And you have to get to them somehow. I worked on Clairol hair coloring, and I sold them on the idea of showing young things, and I used the theme, it lets me be me. That had something to do with just connecting, you know, people connecting with each other. I suppose they were getting the message, hey, somebody recognizes me. Bruce Gelb, who was president of Clairol, came over with a friend and said to him, I want you to meet the woman who invented the Me Generation. And I said, no, Bruce, you're wrong. The Me Generation was there, and I recognized it. And I pointed it out to you and showed you the signs of it.
The way New York got rid of their really bad people, they would send them out to their outer offices, and so they would take the worst person they had in the creative department and make him the creative director of San Francisco. At the time I got into the business, there weren't a lot of creative heroes because, once again, creativity was, it was a word that people really didn't use that much. Actually, the ad man was the account guy. He was the guy you saw in the movies wearing a gray suit. But the creative people were nothing. They were just sort of flunkies that they had in the agency, and the account guy was the guy that was important. So I thought I wanted to be an account guy because I thought those were the important fellows, and if you really want to be an ad guy, you got to be an account guy. You can wear a vest and tie and one of those little funny hats and stuff like that, which is what people did then. And I tried that for about 6 months, and it was just the worst job I ever had. I finally did a campaign in the late 60s for a bank. They were an old-fashioned bank with old-fashioned customers, all of whom were either dying or about to. And they were trying to replace those people with some younger customers. I decided that there wasn't anything to talk about. So I went to the president of the bank and I said, you know, I think what we ought to do is we ought to take some of your money and go out and get a whole bunch of songwriters to write a song about young people and their lives and how their lives are changing and things like that. And I can't tell you what the song is because I'm not a songwriter, and I can't even tell you what the commercials are because I can't tell you that until we do the song. He said, well, that's pretty vague.
We've only just begun to live. White lace and promises, a kiss for luck and we're on our way. We've only just begun before the rising sun.
We got Paul Williams to write a song for us, We've Only Just Begun, which became number 1 or 2 in the nation. So not only did we have a nationwide hit, but we also had some really kind of remarkable commercials for the time because they didn't say anything. Except, you've got a long way to go, we'd like to help you get there. That was it. All we were doing was just reflecting people's lives and doing it in a way that touched that audience. Well, they came into the bank in swarms, asking for money and stuff like that, and the bank finally decided they didn't want them there because they didn't have any money, and they didn't want to give them any money if they didn't have any collateral, so they killed the campaign eventually and got rid of it. But in the meantime, what they did with the campaign is they franchised it to banks all over the country. So it was sort of the beginning of getting some attention to the stuff that was going on or could go on in San Francisco, and eventually did.
I grew up surfing from when I was 12. I got drafted into the Army, and I was in the Army with guys that grew up in New York and had finished college already, or already on their career path. They missed an opportunity when you're young to just revel in your physicality and your sexuality and your ability to just kind of go and touch life. I'll be glad till the day I die that I grew up at the beach in California. I'm Lee Clow, and you're at the Los Angeles office of TBWA Chiat Day, and I'm worldwide chairman and chief creative officer. I'm adopted, and I was raised by two kind of, lower middle class, hardworking people who cared enough to kind of continue to encourage, well, take your art classes. Mrs. Rice told you to take your art classes. I painted a boat, and I made the smoke go the right way out the chimney. So I always had it in the back of my mind that somehow my art was going to be my way of making a living. When I got into the business, I was working for an agency who represented everything that's wrong with the advertising business, run by a guy who basically was unscrupulous. He would do anything to keep a client. He would do anything to win a client. And he basically had mostly contempt for the entire creative department. It was this, how big do you want the logo, sir? All they cared about is milking money out of clients and giving them what they want, that kind of formula that makes for so much of the bad work in our industry. And it almost seemed deceitful to allow clients to dictate mediocre work and then pay us for it when we aspired to do something better. So I was the head of the escape committee because it was kind of like, we can't stay here. This is the devil's workshop. We have to find our way into agencies that believe in the right stuff. And I was lucky enough to discover Chiat Day, which was just being born at this time. And Jay Chiat and Guy Day were the pirate spirit, rebel spirit that I was trying to champion over at this dopey agency. And by the time I left there, they basically said, don't allow him back in the building. They realized that I was kind of an insidious cancer in their company because I was preaching the rebellion of creative people rise up. They can't do shit unless we make ads for them. We should be in charge.
California white wine and real fruit blended in a tub at a party on the beach. And now that original blend comes in a bottle. California Cooler, the real stuff.
Sound. I love this town. I mean, you could get me out of this city. I grew up actually in West Bronx, way West Bronx, a strict Irish Catholic neighborhood, the most racist neighborhood possible. They had at least 50 fistfights with 50 kids who became my best friends. But you had to fight your way through the neighborhood, because I'm Greek, I've always had this reputation that I've been rough with clients. And, I have been. It's not that I'm rough with clients. I have a big idea, and I show it to them, and I try to sell it to them, and, I'm trying to make them rich, and I got to drag them into being rich, It drives you nuts. I can get excited about selling a new kind of pen. I said, wow, look at that pen. Yeah, it's a little this, it's just a little does this. Wow, that's sensitive. Let me sell that motherfucker. What a pen. It's a work of art, too, I mean, I really could get excited about almost nothing, You look at like Maple commercial, for instance. We all use our clickers, so we're all clicking away. And when you click, it's a scene going to another scene. So you click off that son of a bitch. Mickey Mantle's there, holding it back.
I want my Maple.
Johnny Unitas.
I want my Maple.
So when you're clicking, you're going to hit...
I want my MTV.
I can get MTV to be accepted by all the cable operators in America, even though they spent a year pissing on it.
Call your cable company and say, I want my MTV!
They didn't have any cable operators. When I told Bob Pittman, I'll get a rock star, you know, and if you do it my way, we can get thousands of rock fans to drive the cable operators crazy with phone calls. And they said, well, you can't get a rock star. They all hate us. I said, the name of the game is to get a rock star. I went after Mick Jagger and got Mick Jagger.
I want my MTV.
Run the commercial in San Francisco on a Thursday night. 8:30 in the morning in New York, which is 5:30 in San Francisco. The cable operator calls up Bob Pittman, gets him on his private line, and he said, Pittman, get that fucking commercial off the air. Pittman said, I'll take it off right away.
I want my...
The guy in San Francisco says, oh, by the way, I'll take it. So you'll take what? He said, I'll take MTV. He said, why? He said, because I'm getting thousands of phone calls.
I want my MTV.
It's all done. It's in 3 seconds.
I want my Maypo.
I got you. I got you by the balls. I did the commercial. That's advertising, baby. I can make Tommy Hilfiger famous and an important brand, you know, in a couple hours, you know.
He is a visionary. He sees things normal people don't see, and he thinks about what they want to see before they know what they want. He had just recently developed the launch ads for MTV, and he developed this advertising campaign to introduce an unknown to the world of fashion overnight, and he did it. He said, I've got an idea. Why don't we put a picture of Ralph Lauren? He's an old guy with white hair. Calvin Klein, looks a little craggy. And maybe Halston, he's dead. And then we'll say, you're the next. And I said, well, you can't compare me to Ralph Lauren and Calvin Klein. I mean, I can't compare myself. It'll sound like I'm bragging or something. You know, I like to view myself as looking at those guys as the gods.
So I show him an ad, and it says, the 4 great American designers for men are, and then it said C dash dash dash. You know, you had to fill in the name. Calvin Klein, the other one's R dash, Ralph Lauren, P dash dash dash, Perry Ellis. Then it said T dash dash dash, H dash 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 dash. You know, who the hell knew who TH was? Tommy's mother didn't know.
I don't want any part of this.
Of course, Tommy saw it and almost had a heart attack. Said, I can't do that.
He sat me down and said, listen, if you want to have any name recognition in this business at all, you need millions of dollars worth of advertising over and over and over and over, and it'll take you years. If you want your name to be known right away and people to go and look at your clothes, we need something unique like this.
I always use the term seemingly outrageous. You should look at something and think it's a little crazy, and in the next 2 or 3 or 4 seconds or 20 seconds, you realize, wow, it's on the nose. You know, but the product better be damn good, because if the product that isn't any good, I'll put it out of business. Because people will run and buy it and find it's a piece of shit.
I had sleepless nights because I was thinking this is going to, you know, this is going to be the end of my career. And then every once in a while I think, but maybe the name will become known, people will look at the clothes and like the clothes. The ads ran, people went crazy. All of 7th Avenue said, who does he think he is? He's no designer. Ralph and Calvin have been working years and years and years.
He was on the Johnny Carson show the week after I ran the ad.
I said, it's not a campaign I dreamed up myself. It was a campaign Mr. George Lois dreamed up and convinced my business partner we should run. It was not my choice to run this campaign. And I am a struggling designer, and I hope for the best with my company and my clothes. But I've been truly embarrassed by it.
And I did a gigantic billboard that said the same words on 7th Avenue to piss off Calvin and Ralph, etc. He became famous overnight, literally.
But it also drove me into such embarrassment. I rolled up my sleeves and worked harder than I ever thought I'd work. I knew there would be only one way to prove the naysayers wrong, and that would be to come out with amazing clothes. So I literally rolled up my sleeves and worked like an animal, making sure that every button, every zipper, every buttonhole, every color, every fit, every fabric was to perfection. George turbocharged my success, and then it just took off. Then the hip-hoppers started wearing, then the rockers, and then the suburbanites, then the dads and the moms and the kids, and my business burst into a multi-billion-dollar global business.
Great advertising makes food taste better. It makes cars run better. It changes the perception of everything.
For example, I Love New York. The most extraordinary thing about that campaign was the music, in a sense. The music was out for about 2 weeks before the advertising changed. But from the minute the music hit New York changed.
There's only one Broadway. It's in New York.
I think what you can do is manufacture any feeling you want to manufacture. You can create any feeling that you want people to have.
Especially in the evening.
Some people can play the piano, some people can sing. I was born, as a number of people in advertising are born, with a gift for sensing what it is that will turn you on.
I can't believe I ate that whole thing.
You ate it, Ralph.
This is my mantra right here, okay, see? Brutal simplicity. I've asked people to please simplify their ideas.
You know, I changed it to simple brutality one day.
I am not a rebel. I am amazingly driven. This table right here, Parsons School of Design, every cut in this table is art school, and it's been with me ever since. I've never had a different table in my life. I wasn't a very good student, but I had insights. It's kind of like I felt I was a little boy who saw the emperor naked. I saw things, but I didn't know what to do about it. I grew up, you know, in art school in New York, and I would see ugliness, and I knew it was ugly, and I wanted to fix it. And that's a curse, because when you see those things, that's all you see.
I don't really notice stress too much. I'm a little bit oblivious, which makes me good at this, you know? Rich is totally the stress guy. Rich is like a wire.
Well, I'm still trying to prove to my father that I'm any good. I think that's the whole key.
I'm the son of a guy who went to business school at Wharton and a woman who is a painter and was born in Italy. Okay, so I think that's actually absolutely perfect for advertising. I was just asking for it, you know?
If the dog pees, he's out here. And he doesn't really like me too much. Jeff Goodby and myself are very different people. But when we think about ideas, somehow it clicks. There's a yin and yang to it that works.
Our motto here is art serving capitalism. It comes from my mom and my dad.
I wish I could tell you we were that smart to know where it was going to go. Our goal was to create good advertising for milk in California and kind of relaunch this product, which is been with us since the beginning of time. We market milk generically, and the reason is because there are no brands of milk. If you ask people what brand of milk they buy, they'll tell you the red carton or 2%. I buy 2%, that's my brand. Milk sales are dropping about 4% a year, so every year it was a everybody just took milk for granted and said, can I have a Gatorade? If you're Nike or if you're Snapple. You get to introduce new flavors, new bottles, new packages, new shoes. We're selling white milk in gallons, guys. It hasn't changed since 1993. That's a real challenge.
The intent was to get people to just make sure they didn't run out of milk, which meant buy a little bit more of it or buy it before it goes sour.
They had a presentation board and they didn't have a heading for it, and somebody asked Jeff Goodby, what do you want to put up on the top of the board?
And I said, oh, why don't you put like "got milk?" ?
And somebody corrected him and said, yeah, but Jeff, that's not correct. It should be, do you have enough milk?
Got milk, and I look at it and go, that's the dumbass line. That's bad. It's clunky, it's not even English.
And I said, no, I like "got milk." I think it's kind of cool. It's so short, and it's almost nothing. It's almost gone before you can say the words.
It worked.
Great advertising almost always starts with something true.
It was hundreds of $millions spent before this on milk does a body good. And they would run the 100-yard dash and they would, whoa, whoa, whoa. That was untruthful. You do not chug milk after a 100-yard dash. I don't think it's good for you. And the truth is, you cut up your strawberries, you put it on your cereal, you're sitting down, and blah, you don't have very much. Ah, I need milk. So there's the truth. And that's it.
We had no idea where Got Milk was going to go. I could spend all my time and all of our money trying to close down all these ripoffs, and that wouldn't sell any more milk. But maybe the more important part was that they were doing us a service.
Got dense, it's everywhere. Got junk. It's very sexual too.
There is no other kind of communication in the world that's as focused as an ad is. You got a certain amount of time to engage somebody, and you have to do it in a quality way. It's like haiku, or like the Aaron Burr thing that we did for milk. Every single cut is working hard to do something.
And now let's make that random call with today's $10,000 question. It's a tough one. Who shot Alexander Hamilton in that famous duel? All right, let's go to the phones and see who's out there. Hello, for $10,000, who shot... Excuse me? I'm afraid your time is almost up. I'm sorry, maybe next time.
I think we're trying to entertain society using clients' products. I think, now you could, and if a client heard that, they go, wait, you're not thinking about my product? Of course we are. But I believe we're here every day to do something kind of special to connect to society in some entertainment form.
I mean, I tell people all the time, it's the same as making art. You know, I make stuff, I put it in people's faces, and it changes them, and hopefully it enriches them, makes them feel something, and it's really a rush to have it happen to millions of people at once. I've always made a distinction between things that you experience kind of as a single person, and you go, wow, this is kind of cool, I want to go tell my friends about it. And things that you experience as a single person, but you know that millions of other people are seeing it at the same time. It's a mass communal happening, and not too many things offer that in life.
My name is David Kennedy. My rifle number is 1944793, USMC. Blood type O, atheist. Not atheist.
Creative people need this sort of duality of feeling very secure in some deep sense, enough that they can be very risky and put themselves into the work. What I've tried to do is focus on the environment in which people work here and let them relax and be themselves and be adventuresome.
Did you see the nest? Have you been up to the nest? This is a room where all our staff gathers together. We have all kinds of performances here. Someone once said, Wieden and Kennedy is high school with money. So it's pretty much the case. But come back at 3 in the morning. It's like Santa's workshop, you know? The elves don't go home at 5. It's hard work, man. It's physically hard, it's mentally hard. It's a hard sell to con people into running their crazy ideas.
Where the fuck is Kennedy's office? Well, I think most creative people are so damn insecure that they want to think they know everything, but they know deep in their hearts they're just in deep trouble from the minute they get up in the morning. So if you can tell them that's what you're supposed to be, sometimes that's kind of liberating. This is David's office. And everything he's ever touched is in this office.
These are plastic push pins, and in this wall are 100,000 push pins. Fail harder. It took them 4 days and 4 nights, nonstop, to do this. The background is made of push pins. The easy way would be to do the lettering as push pins and leave the wall blank. They chose the hard way. It's a perfectly executed concept, you know? And I think that this should be here forever. Well, it's like Babe Ruth trying to hit a home run. I mean, it's like, if you miss, but at least you swung the bat as hard as you could, you know?
I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot and missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life. And that is why I succeed.
I never had a failure in my life. I probably have, but I forgot them. Because there's nothing you could learn from a failure. If you sit there with a failure and then try to figure out how you failed, you just fucked yourself. Because you're out of business. Because all of a sudden it's George, be careful. And my mother told me to be careful. My father told me to be careful. My sister, everybody tells you to be careful. Your coaches tell you to be careful. School tells you in the army they tell you to be careful. Going into advertising, that's when everybody really told you to be careful. In a meeting, people say, hey, George, be careful.
I mean, everybody tried to kill everything we ever did the minute before we did it. They all got, you know, nervous and...
Where's the beef?
They tried to kill Where's the Beef a week before it was supposed to go on the air.
Where's the beef?
Guys were saying, oh, I don't know, but maybe we'll have a big bun ourselves.
It certainly is a big bun. It's a very big bun. Big, fluffy bun.
Testing service said, absolutely do not, under any circumstance, put that commercial on the air.
Hey, where's the beef? I don't think there's anybody back there.
Trained, left brain, MBA-minded, process-driven people that basically are the bedrock of so many companies. There's no creativity, there's no intuition, there's no trust, there's no bravery.
People think that the ice is 3 inches thick, and it's 2 feet thick. And what I try to tell everybody is, you got power in you to do more than you're doing. Everything should be so ambitious.
At Ellie, we would get a new account, and the first thing we would do is get so damn absorbed into that business that we would almost own it. And then we would go for the product truth. Strong ideas simply presented. We introduced a new company, FedEx.
Okay, units, travel plans. I need to be in New York on Monday, LA on Tuesday, New York on Wednesday, LA on Thursday, New York on Friday. Got it. So you want to work here. What really makes you think you deserve a job here?
Well, sir, I think on my feet I'm good at figures and I have a sharp mind.
Excellent. Can you start on Monday? And in conclusion, Jim, Bill, Bob, call Fred, Low, Dork, Abe, and Ted. Business is bid. Let's get to work. Thank you for taking the meeting. Petey, you did a bang-up job. I'm putting you in charge of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's perfect. I know it's perfect, Peter. That's why I picked Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's perfect. Peter, may I call you Pete? Congratulations.
In this fast-moving, high-pressure, get-it-done-yesterday world, aren't you glad there's one company that can keep up with it all?
You got a deal. Good. I'm putting you down to deal with Dick. Dick, what's the deal with the deal?
And it absolutely, positively has to be there overnight.
I would rather deal with a tyrant any day than with a committee. Committees are, as a general rule, aren't willing to take chances, which is why you have a committee in the first place, so you can share the blame.
They look at something, they say, oh, that's interesting. Maybe they say that, that's interesting. I'll test it and find out if I like it.
A lot of times people think of risk in terms of challenging convention, you know, and that's one form of risk. I don't think it's necessarily the most important. I think it's kind of an easy shot, you know. I think the real risk comes in being willing to try to be authentic. The whole trick of this business is to stop pretending you're an advertising agency and help the client forget that he's a client and just sit down at the table and go, well, okay, and so what are we going to do? How are we going to turn people on?
Well, the thing that makes advertising different is that we have to convince a client, the guy at the company, to buy our idea and then show it to a consumer out there somewhere. And you have to be able to talk to people that are not like you and convince them to do things that are not like them. They did one famous frog commercial on the Super Bowl. Everybody heard them go, Budweiser. In the following Super Bowl, one of the marketing people at Bud said to me, you know, we haven't been able to make anything out of the frogs. I think we're going to kill the campaign. Kill the campaign, that's interesting. We shouldn't kill the campaign. We should get some characters that are going to kill the frogs, you know, and we'll kill the frogs on the Super Bowl. And everybody in the room thought it was a crazy idea, except for August Bush III, who was, you know, the dictatorial autocrat that runs the company. And he said, this was like a movie. He said, that's funny. I like that. I like those lizards. Those lizards are really funny. You can see the marketing people going like, oh my God. And they had no choice.
What the?
Whoa, whoa. I'm no electrician, but that has got to be dangerous.
Oh my. Bud? Whoa. Louie.
Frankie, eventually every frog has to croak.
That's not funny.
I laugh when I'm sad.
What does that have to do with beer? I mean, it was just something you wanted to be part of that thing. You wanted to go, did you see that thing? I get that. If there is a truth in it, it's not a truth about the product, and it's not a truth even about your relationship to the product when you buy it. This sounds crazy, but I think what you're really saying is I'm part of the people that get this humor. Like, I'm part of that group. They want to be part of that community, and the beer becomes the badge of that community. I think that's why it works.
Brands are very much like people. It's kind of like, do you think that brand is interesting? Would you like to have him over for dinner? Is he always the same, or sometimes is he funny and sometimes is he serious? There's a great ad that was done for Harley Davidson years ago. It was a Harley logo tattooed on somebody's arm, and it basically said, when was the last time you felt this passionately about anything? That's what's crazy, how passionate people can actually be about brands if brands are these interesting, fascinating, and maybe high-minded people that you want to assign to being part of who you are.
The interesting thing about branding is that you're giving an idea not just to the customer, but also to the company itself of who they are and a sense of themselves, you know what I mean? And a sense of their role and their responsibility in the greater economy. That's like being at least a midwife to something pretty amazing, you know?
I think we have higher aspirations for our clients and are more passionate about what our clients can be, should try to be than they are. We're trying to tell them, hey, you can be more than just a car company. You can be more than just a pet food company. You can aspire to loving dogs rather than just feeding dogs. I'll take a shot, but I'm not going to make it because I never make it. Yeah. But now if you shoot the ball going through the hoop part, you can cut it together and make it look like I made it. There you go. Now attach that to the front part and you got it. I think any really competitive person is driven by wanting to prove something. Now, I don't know if I want to prove something to my dad or to Jay Chiat, but if you're going to be intense and passionate about business, I think you almost have to say that you're going to attack it in a rebellious kind of way as opposed to a orderly kind of way. And I think that spirit of being rebellious and being the David taking on the Goliath, whether it's a little agency, Chiat Day, taking on the big New York agencies, or whether it's the little clients trying to take on the big clients, isn't it more fun to try and be this little guy trying to kick the big guy's ass? And maybe it's because I couldn't kick anyone's ass in high school that I saw a way in business where, hey, I can use my creativity and jujitsu in terms of being able to take on the big guy and win.
This is the original Apple team that launched Macintosh.
Every year at the Super Bowl, somebody calls and wants to talk about 1984, and people keep trying to explain why it was such a breakthrough. Some people point to the fact that we never showed the product. Some people point to the fact that the Super Bowl has this vast audience and nobody had ever done anything quite this dramatic. Some people point to the fact that we only ran it once. But I really think it's kind of one of those, everything happened just right. Number one, we were actually introducing something that was revolutionary. Macintosh and the mouse graphical interface changed everything. So how often in the history of advertising do you get to actually tell people something great is now available and you can buy it? Two, we had a client who believed it was world-changing and said, go do me an ad that doesn't look like anything anybody's ever done before. Three, what was going on in England with directors who, as we know, have all gone on to be amazing filmmakers, were defining a genre of advertising that had really not quite arrived in the United States. And then a very frightened board of directors actually said, this is stupid, that the whole company is riding on this computer and you're going to spend all this money on a commercial that doesn't even show it. Pull out of the Super Bowl. Jobs and Wozniak looked at each other and said, well, I'll pay for half of it if you will.
Today we celebrate the first glorious anniversary of the Information Purification Directives. We have created, for the first time in all history, a garden of pure ideology, where each worker may bloom, secure from the pests of vague contradictory thoughts. Our unification of thoughts is more powerful a weapon than any fleet or army on earth. We are one people, with one will, one resolve, one cause. Our enemies shall talk themselves to death, and we will bury them with their own confusion. We shall prevail.
On January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce Macintosh. And you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
Everything that was done to launch that product is now done differently because of that product. The editing of film, the editing of music and sound, all the production tools that go into television, all the tools that we use to produce magazine ads, print inserts, and I still say to this day, every computer company on the planet does their ads on a Mac.
Here's to the crazy ones. The misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. They're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. About the only thing you can't do is ignore them. Because they change things. They push the human race forward. And while some may see them as the crazy ones, we see genius. Because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do.
I was not a communicator at all. As a matter of fact, I was a very quiet kid. And when I got in the advertising business, I think I was over 30 years old before I dared speak up in a meeting and offer my opinion about anything.
If the Earth had been tilted a little more to the left, it probably wouldn't have happened. If the continents had waited a day or two to start drifting, it's doubtful. And if the rain hadn't fallen that day, or the moon hadn't been full, who knows? There might not be a town called Vergès. Or a spring called Perrier.
My dad was a jack of all trades during the Depression and having a hard time making a living, as a lot of people did. And he was a writer, and he was a cartoonist, and he was funny and a good salesman and a lot of other things like that. And yet he was essentially a failure. And eventually they put him in the pokey for writing bad checks. So I didn't see him much after that. And I think that the problems that my parents had, my father not being around there, I think emotion was always, to some degree, a part of my life that had been left out. And I think, I mean, I'm not a shrink, and I haven't been to one much, but I suspect that I let advertising be a sort of an avenue to express some of the things that I might not have experienced in my life. I missed a lot of things, and I certainly missed, you know, the kind of wonderful families that we all still admire. And I think there's a lot of that in my work.
When Americans buy a Hal Riney experience, when they buy into one of his campaigns, I think many times what they're buying is what they wish their lives would be. A feeling for something that happened in their childhood, or, you know, something that would have been better if you'd had that kind of dad or that kind of mom or lived in that kind of house or in that kind of little town. A time in America that people wish had happened, probably never did. What people don't understand is I think it's actually Hal as a person that you're experiencing. It's actually what he wishes his life would be, and he's creating that, and it's so evocative and it's so attractive. You're feeling him. You're experiencing the man.
I was drinking a little bit more in those days, and there was a bar right below our office, so I used to do a lot of work down there and have a bourbon while I was working. And I wrote 3 or 4 commercials for the campaign in about 2.5 hours there. And a guy asked me, and he said, "Well, what are you doing?" I said, "Well, I'm writing a campaign for the re-election of the President of the United States." And he says, "Sure, Al, have another drink."
It's morning again in America. Today, more men and women will go to work than ever before in our country's history. With interest rates at about half the record highs of 1980, nearly 2,000 families today will buy new homes, more than at any time in the past 4 years.
It's very often his own voice that's creating this feeling, and there's a cadence to it that's extremely soothing. But I think that after a while, you don't really pay attention to exactly what it's saying so much as a feeling that it creates, a feeling of warmth and comfort that was perfect for a guy like Reagan.
It's morning again in America. And under the leadership of President Reagan, our country is prouder and stronger and better. Why would we ever want to return to where we were less than 4 short years ago?
I'll never forget the first time I walked in and showed the president the Morning in America spots. And he teared up. He basically said, "I wish I was that good." Reagan understood the power of emotion and the power of advertisement. I mean, to him, a campaign was advertising. So we had probably 150 reporters, the most cynical reporters in the world of the National Press Corps. We showed them the ads, dead silence. I mean, they obviously were all moved by the ads. A number of them shook their heads and said, "Boy, those are great." And then in their cynicism, they sort of said, "Boy, I mean, you guys are really manipulating us." And I said, "Well, you know, fortunately, people in the country feel differently than you all do." Hal was all about moving people by emotion, whether it was the Gallo ads or the Saturn ads or anything else that he did later in his life. They are the best ads ever made in politics, and I can attest to that, having spent 40 years of my life in politics.
There is a bear in the woods. For some people, the bear is easy to see. Others don't see it at all.
Hal Riney is the devil. And he's also the angel.
Ronnie always said that there was a responsibility on the part of the advertiser for people to know that this was an ad, okay? So that when you were talking to somebody, you had to make it clear that you were talking in the form of advertising to them at the time. Well, that world is like long gone. You know, a lot of the things that happen to us in the name of advertising now sneak up on us in crazy ways, and they seem like something else.
It's not just about commercials anymore. It's about everything. Everything is an ad. A stunt, a paint on a wall, a guerrilla tactic, a movie, a theater placement of a product. It just goes on and on and on and on.
It's like air and water. It's around you. It's going to happen to you.
He always terrified me, Dan Wieden. He's always going to tell you exactly what he thinks. Making great advertising is a very emotional, very difficult process, and it is not for the faint of heart. It was unusually exciting to sort of be present at the birth of something like that, which just seems to have struck such a cultural nerve.
Some things you don't look at while you're doing, you know? Otherwise you can't do them properly.
It was clear that the #1 mission of Nike is to serve the athlete. But it was in the late 80s that the definition of athlete got expanded way beyond just the professional endorsers. Nike's often credited with the jogging boom in the United States because Bill Bowerman, the co-founder of the company, it actually did import jogging to America, if you can imagine such a thing. He had seen it, joggers in Australia or New Zealand or something. People had just started really running for fitness. That hadn't happened so much before. All Nike ever wanted to do was inspire people to participate in sports. It's a pretty good mission to have as a company.
Actually, the inspiration for this came from a man that was about to be executed for murder in Utah. And his final words to the firing squad were, "Let's do it." And so I thought, well, I like the do it part of it.
That was not the version that I heard when I arrived at Nike. I'm sure they didn't want anyone to really know that that was the genesis of the phrase.
None of us really paid that much attention. We thought, yeah, that'd work. And I think what happened, and it was sort of like a lot of things in life, is sometimes it's the most inadvertent things that you don't really see that are, people started reading things into it much more than sport.
I think they were amazed and delighted, but they would admit totally shocked at just the impact it had.
I think it's a good thing to live by.
Well, just do it.
Let's make it seem like anyone can do this, you know?
It kind of kicked me in the pants to, get, rejuvenated with my career.
Just do it. Do what you want.
I was a senior in high school, and it actually gave me courage to ask this girl out to the prom that I wanted to ask, and it worked.
People were applying it to just everything they had been putting off or procrastinating about or avoiding dealing with. I had women writing to us saying, "I finally left the bum." They were like getting divorces based on the "Just Do It" slogan.
I started getting letters from people that had been having emotional problems or all sorts of issues where somehow this line and this way of looking at the world meant something much deeper than what we were even talking about, There was a woman, Janet Champ, working with Charlotte Moore in our agency, and these two creative people started talking from their heart, from their personal experience about things publicly. They brought themselves to this discussion of what it means to be a woman in today's world and a woman trying to find sense in the world and empowerment.
They just put it all out there. It was very, very personal. I believe it was even a picture of Janet's mother that was in the ad.
I was speaking at the University of Oregon, and there was this woman who said, "Did you do that insert for the women that talked about the women?" Oh my God, I tore that out, handed that to my daughter 3 weeks ago and said, "That's what I was trying to tell you."
If you let me play. You let me play sports. I will like myself more. I'll have more self-confidence. If you let me play sports. If you let me play. If you let me play. I will be 60% less likely to get breast cancer. I will suffer less depression. If you let me play sports. I will be more likely to leave a man who beats me. If you let me play. I'll be less likely to get pregnant before I want to. I will learn what it means to be strong. To be strong. If you let me play. Play sports. If you let me play sports.
Maybe Just Do It did make people healthier in the world. Maybe they got out and did it. Maybe they ran more and played games more and actually got healthier. But the reason why the campaign is successful is because a likable human emotion, the idea that we can get healthier, was suddenly in parallel with a corporate mission, which was to sell a whole bunch of equipment to people. And we like that. We like those two things together. We don't distrust those two things when they're going in the same direction. People don't mind being sold to if they understand why it's happening and they enjoy the process. At the same time, you know, I would hope that people understand that brands can be dangerous. They're like a TV channel that immediately your body locks into, and if you like them, you'll listen. You're like a dog waiting to have something happen. And it's a dangerous kind of attention. It can be abused, and I think the biggest abuse of it is just when people treat other people like idiots. You know, they treat them like they don't have a good sense of humor. They treat them like they're stupider than the advertiser is. That's the biggest crime. I don't like my kids to see bad ads at all. I'm just like anybody else. I think it's bad for them.
I guess I understand why people trash advertising, because a lot of advertising is trashy. People aren't really aspiring to do something creative or illuminating or inspiring. They're aiming low. They're like, we would like a 30-second piece of communication here that tells people these 5 product features. That's like just not very ambitious. You can do so much more. I look at a lot of ads on TV and I think, wasn't there anyone in the room that said, that's not interesting? Nobody is going to care about that? Somebody needs to be saying that in every conference room where advertising is being approved.
I think that it's easy to be cynical about advertising because we don't police ourselves and make things that people want in their lives. We deserve some anger.
My dad was in the business, and so I always thought that advertising was the most whorish business a person could get into. He was staying up late at night away from the family and had long conversations and intimate conversations with people I knew he really didn't like, and he was so nice to them, and it just seemed duplicitous. And he was a great man, you know. I just thought the business was something to be avoided at all costs, you know.
That's what drew us together, a mutual love-hate relationship with the business, you know. I've spent 15 years in Chicago before I moved out here, and I hated advertising. So I used to lie. I used to tell my kids' teachers that I was a designer, you know. I didn't mention the word advertising.
Most advertising is pretty offensive, intrusive, aggravating, annoying, and intellectually based at the lowest common denominator. So it's a hard business to remain prideful, but I happen to believe that when advertising is done well, the wall or the billboard that celebrates a brand artfully and beautifully can be part of our culture as opposed to some form of pollution.
17,500 shots for this session. This was like kind of a final group for verticals, and there's probably 50 in here that we narrowed down to, and I think the final ones that we picked are down here at the bottom. That's one.
This is nothing we haven't done before, but it's also what works within the set in a series.
Give it a little more character or make it a little more specific. Hair is always a good thing. What's the form this chord is going to take?
The whole room.
We kind of brought in this Latin dance instructor, and he would say, okay, well, this beat is right here's a samba, and so he would start doing the samba and kind of dance with his partner and show the different sections of it. And so it was funny because we just brought him in as a consultant, and he was going to talk about it, and then he started dancing, and then the whole agency got around, and we kind of knew that this was a really special track.
Do you have a raw shoot on green screen anywhere? Didn't we find some scat dancing images that we used at the beginning to kind of discover how the dancing might work? These things end up out in the world as art. You know, you go back a couple hundred years to Paris, and Toulouse-Lautrec was doing posters that went up around Paris to invite people to the Folies Bergère. It's now considered art. There are now coffee table books made of Toulouse-Lautrec art. But back then, he was just trying to get people come and buy a drink, pay the cover charge to get into the Folies Bergère. So I think we are in the art business when we do it well.
Lately, I've been traveling a lot. Let's see. I think I'm on a trip today to Atlanta.
To where?
Atlanta. Yep.
What are you going to do there?
Not quite sure.
I've had a very big life. I've had a very busy life. But I have the energy. I was born with the energy. It's in my genes. I don't get tired. Maybe because I'm not afraid. I think fear is a very powerful depressant.
It's a business of rejection. Things are getting killed all the time. You start working, you kill ideas for yourself, then you show it to your partner, and he or she kills a few ideas, and then you show it to the client. The client kills a few ideas, then you show it to some people in a focus group, and they kill a couple of the ideas, and then you come back again and show it to the client again, and he decides he didn't like it after all because his wife saw it. That can sometimes take a year, that process, you know. It can take a year. It's very stressful and depressing to have those ideas killed. And so there has to be a nurturing environment around here because people have to get themselves up off the floor and do this again.
This business is not a work of committees, it's not a work of formulas, it's not a work of anything. It's not a business about any of that. It's not big agencies or anything else. It is simply a few really good people. And if you're lucky enough, as I have been, to have a few of those people around you, you can probably succeed because there aren't a whole bunch of them. I'll tell you that. There are a lot of people in this business, but damn few really good ones. And also damn few people who gets a chance to do good work.
Could I say one other thing? I don't think any organization or any career succeeds if there isn't a goodly amount of old-fashioned love involved and a deep sense of affection for each other and the people you work with. And when it gets, if you can hold on to that and make your decisions with those things in mind, even when they're hard decisions you have to make, I think it's a big difference.
It's got to be something more than just paid art. It's got to be bigger than that. It's a way for big soulless corporations to actually have a personality and to interact with people in a hopefully meaningful way. A lot of times they don't have any way to interact with the world. They're like big lonely beasts in their caves, you know? And we help them come out.
I think artists have a need to express themselves and tell their stories. So if you left a capitalist society and created a socialist or communist society, and there's no need for advertising because you can only buy one kind of soap or one kind of car, that it would stop people from wanting to tell stories and convince people of something. And if the something isn't, you should buy this car, you should buy this computer, it might be, we should overthrow this government or we should change things. But there'll always be somebody with a message.
I've never been afraid of my talent or my ideas or my thoughts or of experimenting or learning something. I love a new idea. If somebody comes to me with a better idea than I have, I love that.
To me, it's a celebration of lightning striking. So when you stumble onto something, you go, Jesus, I think this is something very, very important or very cool, you know? And people feel that. So if you can speak honestly and use this profession to do that, weird shit can happen.
I think creativity can solve anything. Anything. Anything.